Good morning. It feels like a Monday. Didn't sleep well, still exercise, but here we are, Monday morning, and oil is crashing real estate. Funny because 6 years ago, I mentioned the fact that there's a house of cards, right? I'm not saying that this is happening right now, but it could, very well could, that our long weekend could crash because of something outside of real estate. But now when I say the economy could crash because of something outside of real estate, the last big collapse happened because of stock market greed, but then it was all the toxic loans because of real estate. I mentioned we kind of blame real estate cards, right? It's easy. I'm not saying that this is happening right now, kick around, right? Very well could that oil prices spike, prompting home buyers to hit pause. Mortgage rates edged higher. We got up to 6.6% last week. And now, if you remember, we just bottomed out at 5.99. Now we're back up to 6.6. Why? Stock market greed, right? The Iran war, but then it was all the freaking out loan originations, real estate. So we kind of blame slowed down. Home buyers took a little bit of pause. Redheaded stepchild to kick around, right there, right? So then what else happened this year? Well, buyers oil prices spiked here, but they hesitated to hit freak out. And mortgage rates all across the U.S. higher. We got up to 6.6% last week. Palo Alto. And now, if you remember, we just bottomed out at 5 because they're not subject to. Now we're back up to 6.6. Why? Because regular people. Well, those people have, right? And regular people have war and everybody's freaking out in the Bay Area, which is already loan origination. If you don't have $10 million, you're struggling to find a house. Home buyers took a little bit of pause. I have 3 houses for sale right now, and San Jose is 4.1% increase over last year. We're still seeing things slow down. Freak out because rates went up. Happening. CPI all across the U.S. indicator. Inflation comes in scalding hot in March. Now, we pushed and got the market, got the economy back on its wheels, and started spending, and that caused a little bit of inflation. You saw it at the gas pump. To the norms. You saw it in rates. You saw it in Babudo. Cost of eggs and toilet paper is going down. Yeah, absolutely. Everything will naturalize over time. It's just a normal thing. However, you're not paying in the Bay Area, which is already costly, and if you don't have, so prices have not normalized or gone down. You're subject to the inflation that we make it affordable over the last 6 years. Right? I have 3 houses for sale right now. Oil, war, and everything's freaking everybody up. So it's not that we're not spending, we're just increase. Good news if you're in an HOA. However, you know how I feel about HOAs. Slow down. Not why? Big, huge because rates went up on HOAs. Okay. And the reason being is because indicator the people that are inflation comes in scalding hot in volunteers, 2 power hungry, 3 pushed, not really in control, and got the market. There's no regulation back on its wheels, and it started spending, and that caused a little bit of inflation. Fair for everybody. At the gas pump, the power hungry tend to prey on the weak and rates. You saw it disenfranchised. Or what? Or let's just say the ones that don't going down. Stay within the lines of the rules. Everything will naturalize over time. It's just a normal thing. I understand both sides. However, my problem is, and I have friends that manage 2,000 prices. Their intent is to increase the cost. So prices have not normalized or come down. In California, they max out at 5%. There's no regulation outside of that. Experience over the last 6 years. Like a rule of thumb. There's no actual rule that I know of, and if I'm wrong, please send it to me. Oil, Georgia is doing a freaking everybody out bill that will regulate. It's not that we're not spending, we're just not meaning that they have to be subjected to licensure. Good news if you're in an HOA and you know how I feel about HOAs. I like it. I like the idea of at least getting started. But what I want to know is the reason being is because, to be fair to both sides, people that are in control what is one volunteers, 2 power hungry, under the bill, every HOA really register, blah blah blah, place liens, foreclose. Bill with no regulation to both parties. Now, if I was in an HOA, I'd be like, we do that every year anyway, so it's not a big deal. We'll just send the report. Granted, and yes, the power hungry tend what's in it for us. How does that help the consumer? Franchise of a house in the HOA. Well, let's just say the ones that don't cases of people being taken advantage of by predatory associations. Can it do that? I understand. Will it save the my problem is, I have friends that manage in an HOA from these aggressive predatory tactics. I don't know. Their intent is to increase the cost. I'm not a fan of the HOA because they do every year. Not they. In California, they max out at 5%. There's no regulation outside of that they're in. They go power hungry. I understand that. But if you're buying a house within an HOA, you understand that. And if I'm wrong, rules and regulations that you have to fall under. Georgia is doing it. If you don't, then don't buy a house in an HOA. That will regulate, which is why I choose not to buy a house that they have to be subjected to. My parents' house, licensure in a retirement community, and so far it's not so everything. If an HOA fails to register within the state,
I like the idea of at least it getting started,
issuing liens,
at least.
Okay, if it's getting started. But what I want to know is what's
even though I am a realtor.
Yet, when you ask both sides, let's see
governing
what the
board
point
of
of
the
the
NAR
NAR
does
does
for
for
the agent,
as
as
well
well
as
as
a
under the
consumer.
bill.
There's
Every
not really an
HOA
answer.
must
We help
register,
them do this, we help them do
place
that.
liens,
How does it-
foreclose.
It's like when an agent charges
bill
you
which
full
full
boat.
boat.
They
They say, I
support
work
from
really hard
both
for you.
parties.
Exactly.
Now,
Show me how
if
you
I was
do
in an
it. I
HOA,
have a
it'd be
worksheet
like,
that
we
shows
do that
you
every year
exactly
anyway,
what I
so
do
it's
before
not a
we
big
get
deal.
started.
Just send the report
to
to the
justify
state.
why I
And
charge
yes,
you what I
they're
charge.
going to get a
I'd
fee.
like to see a little bit
What's
more
in
about
it
it
for
and
us?
what is
How does that help the consumer?
look back
The
on this
owner
and see what
of
it really
a house
how it really
in the
helps the
HOA.
consumer, not the HOA.
Right?
So there you go.
If you're
I've heard
thinking
countless
about putting your
cases of
parents
people
into
being
a
taken advantage of by
age
predatory
retirement
community
communities
or an adult
Can it do
community,
that? Will it do
older
that?
adult
Will
community,
it
55 plus.
there's some downsizing that needs to
owners of
happen
an
and some
HOA
repairs that need
within
to
an
happen
HOA
and some hard
from these
questions that
aggressive
need to be asked
predatory
and
tactics
answered before you move forward.
$2.6
I don't
million
know.
for a
Every time the government gets
1944
involved,
built 1,300 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath
things
cottage on a
tend to get more
5,500
expensive
square foot
and less
lot.
efficient.
And this is
and less
over here,
effective.
Monte Vista and Kennedy.
And I understand
here,
the plight of
Kansas
the
right
HOA.
here.
I'm not a fan of
So
HOAs.
This is
'cause
my
they do
backyard where I grew
not
up.
they.
This is like a little
Some
cottage for taking
$2.6 million
advantage of the situation
They
that they're
put
in.
inside,
They're
5 whole
power-hungry. I
pictures. Look
understand
at that. So obviously you're not buying it for the house. But if you're buying a house
for
within an
land,
HOA, you understand that you
you're
have
paying
certain
$2.5
rules and
million
regulations
for
that
the
you
lot,
fall
and then you
under.
can put $1.9
$1.9 million
if you
on
don't,
that
then
lot,
don't
build
buy a
into a
house in an
McMansion.
HOA.
What you're buying. There you go. If you're interested in looking, let's go take a look.
why I
This
choose
is
not to buy
Willow
a
Glen
house
House
in
of the
an
Week,
HOA.
$2.2
However,
million.
bought my parents'
This price
house,
decreased. Why
and
did I bring this one
that's
up?
in a
Because it's
retirement
decreased in
community.
price. And
Guys, I'm
so
gonna
far
tell
it's
you
not so
this
bad.
100 times till I'm blue in the face. Till you actually
If an HOA fails to
you
register
as
within
a
the
seller,
state,
do
you will
not
be
set the
barred from
sales
collecting
price.
fines.
You as a
issuing
seller
liens.
set the list price. And if you list it
Okay,
too
but there's
high,
got to be
if
like
you
the
list your
golden
house
rule,
too
like
high, it will not
realtors,
sell. If you list it low, and it could be 5, 10, 15% below
calling myself a
price,
realtor
you're
anymore,
going to
even though
get
I am
all the
a
eyeballs
realtor.
you need.
Because the
to
National
get your
Association
house
of
sold.
Realtor
You list your house
set
10%
forth these
lower,
guidelines
you're still
100
going to
years ago,
attract the
and
high-end people,
they
the people that
require
can afford your house.
their
but you're
subjects,
bringing
their
in traffic,
realtors
you're
to
bringing
fall
in
within
things.
the
I already
guide
got
ethics.
offers on my last listing. It's 1.65.
When you ask what
This one
the
right here,
governing
this
board of
listing
the
right here,
NAR
my house
does
we have
for the
22,000
agent,
views on the
as well as
on
the consumer.
advertising.
There's not really
right?
an answer.
Those are
Well,
impressions.
we
These
help
are
them
actual
do
ad
this, we help them
views.
do this.
Search
But
for
how?
results.
How does it-
Matterport
it's like when an
views,
agent charges you
floor
for
plan
views. I work really
views.
hard
Remember
for
all that
exactly
stuff that's
show
going
me how
into
you
it.
do that.
I already have
I
had
have
an offer for the last few
I have a
days.
worksheet that
and
shows
I
you
have
exactly
other
what I
offers
do
coming
before
in
we get
because
started
It's
to
listed
justify
below
why I
where
charge you
it's
what I
supposed to
charge.
be. I listed at 1.65. Comps are at like 1.819. So I wanted to
I'm
bring in
glad
traffic,
that they're
and I
doing
brought
this.
in a
I'd
ton
like
of
to see
traffic
a little
over
bit
the
more
weekends.
about it.
So
And
get your house sold quick.
the 5,
Don't be
10
afraid to
year
lose
look
price.
back on
The
this and see what it
buyers,
really-
buyers
how
will
it
tell
really
you what your
helps
house
the
is worth.
consumer.
Not you, not your agent, not the
Period. It's
HOA.
been on market
So
for
there you go. 32 days. And
If you're
it's on book, which is a
thinking about putting your
busy
parents
street,
into
and
an
look
age
inside. It's nicely
retirement
staged.
community
also
or
staging.
an
Holy crap,
adult
guys! You need to stage your
community.
house. I know it's
Older adult
expensive.
community
Selling a
is
house 55
expensive.
plus. If it was
Yeah,
cheap
it's funny
and
that I can
everybody
actually
could do it, we wouldn't need real estate
qualify to buy a
agents
house under
negotiate
now.
all that stuff.
But there's some
Bring in
downsizing
and
that
do the
needs to happen,
design,
and
do
some
the
repairs that need to
photography
happen,
and marketing.
some
If you
hard
don't do
questions that need to be asked.
staging
and
you're not
answered
going to have a
before you
pretty
move
looking
forward.
house,
So
so people are not going to come in.
And then pricing.
We have
is
all the
important.
questions that we'll
But look,
ask you.
This is
And if you're
original.
interested in
Uh,
learning
maybe
more, let us
upgraded
know.
years ago.
I don't see the
Enough of that.
kitchen. Kitchen was
Cupertino House of the
upgraded
Week,
back in the
not my
90s.
listing,
You have
$2.6
tile.
million
Yeah,
for
that might be
a
original.
1944
And they just
built,
painted it,
which is okay.
1,300
There's
square
nothing wrong
foot,
with it.
4-bedroom,
Look,
2.5
don't
bath,
ask a
bath,
premium
cottage
when
on
your
a
house hasn't
5,500
been
square
updated.
foot.
Let's take a look.
lot, cooling,
And
central
this is
AC. So at least you
over
have that
here,
going for you.
Monte
But
Vista,
the original list price was
Kennedy,
2.3.
right here.
Now you're at 2.2.
Kansas
You're
right here.
After a month, you're shooting
So
yourself in the foot. This is
okay?
my
Bridge,
backyard.
Way,
where I grew
Drive,
up.
in Sausalito.
Price decrease. Okay, so this
Here's
is
the
like a
thing.
little
With this
cottage
house
for
right here,
$2.6
you're
million,
attracting
the market. With this house right here, you should be being a market maker.
Let's
This
take
is
a
in
quick look
Sausalito.
inside.
Not a whole
5
lot
whole
of
pictures.
$30 million
Look at that.
houses for sale. In
So obviously you're not
Sausalito.
buying it
There's
for
one,
the house.
And then
You're
in
buying it
Tiburon,
for
there's
the
3.
land.
So those are your closest
5,500
comps, but
square
it's in a
foot.
different
You're
town
paying
altogether.
$2.5 million
This has to
be a
lot,
market
and then
maker.
you
So
gotta
when you
put
look
$1
at
to
this
$1.5
house,
million on
it
that
has to
lot,
be beautiful. It has to be
build
right.
into a
And if you come
McMansion,
in with a big
that's what
price
you're
and
buying.
then you
There
decrease
you
it,
go. you're interested in
signaling to
looking,
the
let's go
market
take a look.
that you're not a market maker.
408,
Like,
705,
let's get this thing.
6817. It's a beautiful house.
This is
If I had $30 million.
books in.
to
Willow
spare,
Glen House of the
maybe I
Week,
would do it.
$2.2
They
million.
dropped the price.
List price
Why did they go
decrease.
from
Why did I
28
bring
to
this one up?
28?
Because it's
I don't
decreased
know.
in
This
price.
is still a beautiful house. Everything about this house is gorgeous. I would love this house because
Guys,
it's on the
I'm gonna
water.
tell you
Your
this
view is the
100
bay.
times
You
till
have
I'm
San
done with this,
Francisco and
till you
everything.
actually
Not a big fan of the
actually
zebra
listen.
skin thing, but whatever. Yeah, that's
You as the
gorgeous,
seller
guys.
do not set the sales price.
There you go.
You
You
as
have
a
$30
seller
million
set the list
laying around and
price.
you want to
If
buy a
you
house on
list
the
it
water,
too
let me know.
high,
Let's go take a look. Let's get you approved and start looking for houses. This checklist, when you download it, it gives you all the things
If you
to
list
look
your-
for.
if you
in
list your
multiple
house
homes.
too
So
high,
if you wanna
it
look at
will
air
not
conditioning
sell.
and kitchen
If
and
you list it
bathrooms and
low, and
cracks
it could be
walls and
5,
all that
10,
other stuff,
15%
it gives you something to take a
below
look at
price,
outside of, ooh, pretty.
you're
or I like
going
the
to
floor
get
plan.
all
Lets
the
you
eyeballs
get down
you
to the
need
nitty gritty and lets you walk
to
through
get your
all the
house
little
sold.
things and figure out which house best fits your needs. So download
Period.
it.
All right.
And then nothing else really going
List your
crazy
house
right here outside.
10%
of
lower, you're
we
still going to
closed
attract
$428 million in
the high-end
houses
people,
last
the people that
week.
can afford
So anyway,
your house.
we're at
but you're
$2.4
bringing
million
in traffic,
average
you're bringing
sales
in
price in
things.
San Jose.
I already
Santa
got
Clara County.
offers on
That's
my
crazy.
On my last
1.6
listing
to
is
1.8.
1.65.
There you go. Puts that in perspective,
This
right?
one right here.
Solano, the lowest is 618. If you can't afford $1 million house, maybe we get you a nice house in
There you go.
Solano
This
or San
listing right
Benito.
here?
San
Yeah,
871. There's a lot of houses out there, guys, that you could buy that you can afford.
We have
right? And why do I
22,000
point
views
that
on
out?
the-
Well,
on the-
Solano
on
is about the same
advertising.
pricing as Las
Right.
Vegas, as
Those are
Austin,
impressions. These are actual ad views.
DFW, as
search for
so you go
results,
outside of the Bay
Matterport
Area,
views,
and that's the kind of
floor
pricing you
plan
can
views.